Thought you caught everything in Squid Game 2? Season 3 just proved you probably didn't. The fisherman was always working for the enemy. The quiet old fisherman with the rusty boat wasn't just some harmless local. From the moment he stepped into the story, something felt off. He knew too much about Gi-hun's brother, way too quickly, as if someone had briefed him in advance. He played dumb around technology, pretending not to understand how drones worked. But not long after, the drone was mysteriously destroyed. The timing wasn't a coincidence. Then there's the so-called rescue. Out of all the islands in the region, he just happened to be in the exact spot where Gi-hun washed ashore. That kind of luck doesn't exist in the Squid Game. It was planned. He steered Gi-hun away from the real island, delayed the investigation, and even helped set up a trap explosion in the bay. He never asked for money because he was already being paid. The front man needed someone to mislead any outsiders, and the fisherman played the part perfectly. Player 001 was born to inherit the bloodshed. This theory sounds wild until you actually look at the clues. Player 001, the front man, once said he was adopted, and his birth name is Oh Young-il. Now think back to Season 1. The old man who created the games was Oh Il-nam. Same surname, same sadistic playground. That's not a coincidence, it's a family blueprint. And it gets weirder. Both characters are lactose intolerant. Yeah, that random milk thing was more than just a stomach issue. Il-nam told Gi-hun his son had the same condition. Now here's a man running death games and secretly raising a replacement to keep the nightmare going. Even his leadership style matches. Cold, calculated, completely disconnected from guilt. The name Hwang In-ho was given after adoption, but his bloodline was already sealed. Il-nam actually raised someone to rule them. It's not just about money or power, it's about legacy, and that throne of carnage was passed down. The shaman was never guessing. At first glance, the shaman looked like comic relief. Strange outfit, wild stares, talking about ghosts and curses. But once the games begin, her so-called nonsense starts to make a little too much sense. She tells Gi-hun he's haunted by the dead, right before he starts seeing Sang-woo and Se-byuk in his dreams. She talks about bad karma following him, just as his worst fears begin creeping back in. And when she mentions a cleansing ritual she'll do if they survive, that's before a single person has even died. Everyone else still thinks they're in some weird retreat. The timing isn't lucky. It's too early to be a good guess. She saw things before they happened. While others were panicking over food and forming alliances, she was already bracing for death. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was something darker. But if you look at what she said, and when she said it, the truth is clear. She wasn't raving. She was reading the future, and she knew exactly what was coming. The games were built for a dead child. Season 2's games might look colorful and creative on the outside, but underneath the bright paint and carnival music lies something far more tragic. These aren't just random childhood themes. They're memories that never happened. The carousel is a fairground the front man never got to visit with his unborn son. The pentathlon course, designed like a twisted school sports day, is another stop on a tour through the life that boy never got to live. Every challenge feels like a letter to a child who never took his first breath. The decorations, the music, the innocence. It's all fake. It's grief dressed up as a game show. While players fight to survive, the frontman is dragging them through the childhood his son was robbed of. That's why the settings feel personal. They were never meant to entertain the VIPs. They were built to punish the world for what he lost. The rice rolls were served with a hidden weapon. There's something strange about the way meals are served in Squid Game, and it's not just the portion size. In one scene, players are given kimbap, Korean rice rolls, alongside metal forks. That detail might seem small, but it's completely out of place. In Korea, kimbap is always eaten with wooden chopsticks or bare hands. Forks don't belong on that tray. The cutlery was no accident. It was bait. A quiet way for the organizers to slip a weapon into the room without saying a word. It's the same trick used in Season 1, when players were handed steak knives before lights out. A warm meal followed by a cold killing, served in 2 courses. This time the setup was even more casual. No drama, no warning. Just a shiny fork in the middle of an already tense room. The message was clear without being spoken. No one's going to stop you. If you've got a grudge, now's your chance. The bunk beds were never for sleeping. The towering bunk beds stacked across the players' room weren't just for show. According to the production designer, their layout was based on shipping containers. Cold, industrial, and lifeless. The players weren't being given a place to rest. They were being shelved, sorted, and stored like cargo. The message couldn't be clearer. You are not people here. You are inventory. Every overhead shot drives that idea deeper. From above, the bodies blur together. together. No names, just green uniforms and numbers. The camera only sees units. The tracksuits erase identity. The bed stacks erase privacy. And the angles erase any sense of control. Nothing about the space is made for comfort. It's too tall to feel safe, too open to feel personal. There's no separation, no softness, no privacy, because that would suggest value. The design was intentional from the ground up, and it wasn't just set dressing. It was a visual warning. Once you step inside those walls, you're not a contestant. You're cargo waiting to be processed. The hunger was part of the plan. If you were watching closely, you might have noticed something strange about the meals in Season 2. After the first game, players were served full lunch trays. Rice, soup, protein, the works. But as the competition went on, the portions started shrinking. By the final rounds, that generous meal had been replaced with one sad, crusty roll. This wasn't a budget cut. It was psychological warfare. Hunger changes people. It clouds your judgment, spikes your stress hormones, and kills your patience. By the time the rebellion kicked off, most players had been running on fumes. That's not a coincidence. It's a trigger. The same tactic was used in Season 1. After starving players for hours, the organizers handed out a single hard-boiled egg and a soda, knowing full well it would lead to hoarding, fights, and eventually, murder. They don't need to shout orders or push you to violence. All they have to do is let your body do the work. Starve a room long enough, and it will turn on itself. A word gave her the respect she was denied in real life. In a show full of violence, betrayal, and hidden agendas, one of the most powerful moments came in the quietest way. During a lighthearted chat about age, a teammate called player 120 Ani, a Korean word younger women use to address older women. That small choice of word hit harder than any twist the show had thrown at us so far. Player 120, a trans woman and former soldier, had been moving through the games with her guard up, but in that moment, you could see something shift. She wasn't being questioned, mocked, or labeled. She was simply being seen. Her story mirrors the real-life tragedy of Sergeant Byun Hee-soo, South Korea's first openly trans soldier, who was discharged after her transition and later passed away while fighting to be heard. Player 120's arc may be fictional, but her silence and reaction in that scene reflected a very real pain. No dramatic music, no speech, just one word. And in Squid Game, that was more radical than any gunfire. The chip behind the ear isn't new. When Thanos joked about his drunk father claiming he had a chip in his head, it sounded like typical rambling, something you'd hear from a bitter man with too many regrets. But that line might have been more than background noise. In the first episode, Gi-hun finds a tracker behind his ear, one placed there by the Squid Game organizers. That same kind of implant might explain everything Thanos' father once claimed. If you connect the dots, the picture gets darker. What if Thanos' dad wasn't making it up? What if he was a contestant in an older version of the game, one that ran quietly decades ago, before hidden cameras and designer masks? Maybe he survived just long enough to tell someone what happened, but not enough to be believed. The memory faded, the trauma didn't. And now, years later, his son ends up right back in the same nightmare, this time with cameras, branding, and better lighting, but the same brutal system. The cameraman was silently erased from existence. In one scene during the chaos of the shootout, something unexpected appears, just barely, in the corner of the frame. A crew member wearing all black, caught in the middle of a fictional massacre, holding a very real camera. The moment spread online almost instantly. Memes exploded, jokes flew, and viewers had a field day pointing out the slip. But if you check that same episode now, he's gone. No warning, no announcement. Netflix didn't post about it, didn't acknowledge the mistake, and definitely didn't apologize. They just quietly edited him out, using CGI to patch over the blunder like he was never there in the first place. It's a reminder that nothing on streaming is ever truly final. Episodes can be changed after millions have already seen them. Those were the secrets Netflix hoped you'd scroll past. From psychic warnings to violent forks, we've officially seen it all. Now be honest, did you catch any of these on your first watch? Or are we all just pawns in the frontman's fan club?